all of you. I don't know whether you're ready, Julia, or should we wait a few more moments?
They're still coming in if you just wait a few minutes.
Let's
Okay, Janet, that seems to have slowed now.
We may get some slightly later arrivals because my Zoom had to be updated before I could join, so people may have the same situation. So hello to everyone. I'm back in the UK, and the sun is shining, which is a delight given that I think most of winter has been very wet here. And I'm going to be welcoming Paul and Judy, who I've known for many years now on Zoom. We've never actually met, but we meet very regularly because we're members of the International Oblate Council. And Paul and Judy offer such wisdom at those meetings. And so this is a joy to welcome them, but also to hear a little more about other aspects of their life. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to share. So let us just be present to one another. O God, come to our assistance. O Lord, make haste to help us. Glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was now and forever. Amen. So the reading comes from John Main, The Way of Unknowing. When you have been trying to build something and it ends in disaster and failure, when you've worked at something for years only to find that the sum total, the result of the whole thing, is nothing, then you realize that the basic need for all of us is to go into something much larger, much deeper than success, something more than acquiring possessions. The larger reality that becomes so much clearer is the experience of poverty. Many people come to meditation out of desperation. In facing poverty, they have tried everything and nothing else seems to work. Our opening meditation prayer. Heavenly Father, open our hearts to the silent presence of the Spirit of your Son. Lead us into that mysterious silence where your love is revealed to all who call. Maranatha, come, Lord Jesus. There are little things that go on behind the scenes at Benedict's Well, and Mary and I weren't quite sure who was going to be doing the gongs, so hence the slight delay. But we make a marvellous team, and of course Paul and Judy are very much part of Benedict's Well, and their presence is a delight. To see them both together, husband and wife, sharing the welcoming. So it's wonderful to welcome them both today, and a little bit about the biography that they've shared, which is a little different than perhaps some of the other biographies that they've shared in the past. So we know that Paul and Judy have been very much part of WCCM for over 30 years, and Oblates for half that time. And they say, our shared journey is a great blessing and occasional challenge. Meditation has opened our lives in wonderful directions, including being part of David's Place, an inner city community in Sydney, where homelessness and the marginalised, I'm sure, is a huge challenge. And here they have a place of friendship, peace, spiritual nourishment and connection with the wider community. So this is the story of David's Place, and I really look forward to hearing what they are able to share with us. So welcome to you both, and much love.
Thanks, Janet. It's great to be with you all. What I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to just give you a little introduction to how David's Place came about, and then we're going to show a film that was made about David's Place a few years ago now. And the film's good because many people ask us, what do you do at David's Place? And I always found it very, very hard to explain, but this film does it for us, and you'll meet some of the people that we're going to talk about too in the film. So that film's only about 5 minutes long. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about a few friendships I've made while I've been at David's Place. Judy's going to talk about retreats. And then I'm going to finish off talking about prayer. And we'll finish the night with a beautiful poem that was written by one of the David's Place people, a man called Davo. So how did David's Place come into being? Well, it was the brainchild of a lady who I knew, whose name was Sue. I didn't know Sue that well at that stage, but I really liked her. She had a deep faith, and she was a very grounded person. And she spent a lot of her time hanging out with people who live very vulnerably. And I guess we'd call them the marginalised. And she felt there was a particular spiritual nourishment that occurred for everyone in that relationship. And she'd often told me about this. So I always liked to talk to Sue. Anyhow, I was at a Christian meditation event, and it was a morning tea break, and I saw Sue was there. So I went across and said to Sue, what's happening? And Sue said a big thing had recently happened for her, and it had made her really take stock of things. She told me a man had died from an overdose, and his name was David. And she said, although he was a heroin addict, he was a very beautiful man. He took care of other people on the streets, and amongst the street people, he was a bit of a hero. He also had a very deep faith. And Sue said his death sort of shocked her because she realised none of the churches that she knew of in Sydney or anywhere knew how to receive someone like David. And she said that the best the churches can do is offer kind of material support, which obviously is a good thing, but it didn't seem to have any capacity to receive the gift that people like David offered. So she said, I'm thinking of forming a new community, and I want to call it David's Place after David. and it will be a place where the marginalised can hang out. And she said, but more than that, it'll be a meeting place. It'll be a place where people from the top end of town or the middle class can come and form friendships with these people, because she said these friendships are just truly wonderful. And she said, and this is the one that really caught me, she said, and then more than that, I wanted to make it a place where Jesus would love to hang out. And she said, do you want to be part of it? And I said, so what could I do? And she said, oh, well, she said, I know a lot of homeless people and a lot of street people, and I'll invite them to come. And if you can provide us with a place and a bit of material support, and if you could also invite friends to come along and be part of it. And Sue had this great vision. She said the health of any society rests upon the relationship between the haves and have-nots. And she said a city or a community is healthy when there is a real relationship. But when these two ends of town are very separate and distant, then distortion builds up in the minds of both the rich and the poor. They have distorted images of each other, which alienates the whole city. And this grand vision really captured me, and I said, Sue, I'm in. So that night when I got home from the Christian meditation event, I told Judy what I'd just done. Judy said, great, let's do it together. So we have. And Judy invited her brother, Peter, and we invited a few other friends to join us. And this was over 26 years ago that this happened in David's Place. It's still going strong to this day. And just one little thing before we show the film, what Sue said about it being a good thing for a city to have this place where the top end of town and the bottom end, so to speak, materially anyhow, can come together, has proved true to me time and time again. One little example of this is David's Place people often have very bad dental problems. And because I was a dentist, I was able to ring up friends of mine and say, would you mind helping and doing their teeth for them? And I never had one single dentist in Sydney say no. They all said yes. And a lot of them put aside a whole morning for doing the dental work. And their staff used to love it. They used to love the days where David's Place people turned up. And I've noticed this time and time again. David's Place transforms people, and people are naturally generous. They just don't have a place like David's Place to be able to express it. So this is the value, I think, of David's Place. But now we'll just watch the movie, which will go for about 5 minutes. Start.
There's no sound, Mary. We've lost the sound, Mary.
Mary, are you sharing computer sound?
Rest assured, Mary is trying to do her magic on this. So if we wait just a few moments, I'm sure that we'll be able to resume that video. Well, I don't know whether Paul or Judy, you want to say a little more? Well, Mary's doing her magic.
Well, I might just start talking about some of the friendships. I noticed the photos of the people I'm going to talk about are in the film. You'll recognise them. But standing there, though she did not.
Paul and I and a group of Paul's friends started David's Place 20 years ago. We've been going ever since in a number of different locations, and now we're here in the demountable behind the church.
A lot of people choose to help the poor, but very few people actually choose to be in relationship with the poor. So it's about being in relationship with the poor.
It gives me a forum for my thinking, to verbalise my thinking. There's the aspect of community, friendship.
The sort of place where you come and you do your own thing.
David's Place, we always say, is a place for prayer and fellowship for marginalised people and people who want to be with them.
We're going to start the night with a period of meditation, and Davo's kindly volunteered himself.
Eyes gently shut. Become aware of your feet firmly on the ground. Feel how they feel. And become aware of your legs.
Well, the nucleus of the group that we started 20 years ago still comes every week. And I think there's a really deep sense of shared life with those people. And if you remember a moment in the day that you feel a great sense of gratitude or pleasure, then it would be good to share it.
There was an Asian fella from Vietnam who's having a bit of a turn. As it turns out, he's on the methadone, but he often has a shot of heroin at the same time. So just this brief encounter with somebody that didn't really know me that well, but trusted me to check him over.
Somebody I've known for a long, long time died on the 4th of April. And today, of course, the 23rd, he buried today, yeah.
Mary stayed outside near the tomb weeping and saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been, one at the head, the other at the feet. As she said this, she turned round and saw Jesus standing there, though she did not recognise him. Does anyone have any comment about this intriguing thing, why people don't recognise Jesus?
It's like when you look directly at the sun, you get blinded. You can't see.
She thought he was the gardener, so he couldn't have been too shining like at the Transfiguration.
Why didn't Miriam recognise? Why don't we sometimes?
Yeah.
Why don't we recognise the risen Christ, especially when someone tells us? If we're not taught fear and shit in our life, then we're going to be more welcoming and accepting of the other person.
There's a lot of disagreement, there's a lot of argument at David Place. It's kind of robust, I guess, in that sense. But at the end of the day, everyone really, really cares deeply about the other. And that's a rare thing to find. And that's the thing that we really all, I think, are trying to find, a place of belonging.
You know, the general senses in those days were probably different to what we have nowadays. We're awake to so much more life nowadays.
They were aware of their basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, all of that.
It's funny, but if you go to a country like India, where a lot of people do live very simple, what we might call primitive lives, I always feel they are more in touch with reality than we are.
This sort of business of watching screens all the time is an incredible distraction from reality.
You look at the news and it's a real discipline to extract what is really important and to leave the distractions alone.
Westerners tend to overanalyse, you know, how many... The only ones making lots of money are the shrinks. And they'll even send their poor pets to shrinks. They overanalyse things.
There are various teachings about how many bodies we have. And there are some organisations that say we have 7 bodies. And one of them is physical.
You know, life after death or beyond death is something that's, you know, totally beyond time as well as space. You know, eternity is like everything happening immediately now. That it's been a great gift is seeing the marginalised people who have come here really grow and mature, develop friendships and, you know, take responsibility for the life of the community.
I think one of the great things about it is so many of my friends say to me, how can I help? Meaning, how can I give donation and things. I said, no. The best thing you can do is come and be part of it. And I've noticed over the years so many people who have got infected by that. They get here and they go, wow. So I think that gives you that. We have meetings like that 4 times a week, and we also have a mass barbecue once a month. And there's lots of other meetings around Sydney, just informal ones during the week. So it's a very active community. I want to talk to you a little bit about friendship. I know we're running a little bit behind time, so I might have to cut this a little bit short. But I want to talk about the very first person I met. And you could see him in that film. He was a man with a long beard. His name is Don. And when the very first David's Place meeting we ever arranged, I walked in the room and I saw Don, and he had a very peaceful manner. And I thought it'd be nice to talk to that guy. So I walked up to Don and said, oh, hi, what's your name? And what do you do? Where do you live? And all these sort of, anyhow, he looked at me very kindly with beautiful eyes. He looked at me and said, Paul, I can see this is the day you've decided to come and meet poor people. And good on you. And he kind of saw through my earnestness, and he gently mocked me. And for years later, he used to always remind me about my earnestness in coming to David's Place. And I learned in time, over a long time, Don was one of the most beautiful men I've ever met. He was kind and generous, and he was always taking care of other people. He had a great intellect. I don't think he ever worked a day in his life, but he had a very full life. And unfortunately, he's a hoarder. And the people who are hoarders are really precluded from government housing. So he spent most of his time sleeping on other people's rooms or on the street. But he's been such a lovely person. He's sort of the host at David's Place. So and about 3 years ago, it's a bit like Jesus just disappearing at the end of he just has gone, and no one knows where he has gone. And we all pray that he will return. But this is after he'd been with us for over 20 years. So, but I think Don paved the way for me for understanding a lot of people. And in his gentle mockery of my earnestness, I realised that getting to know someone isn't about kind of questioning them and stuff like that. It's just about simply hanging out and being part of people's lives. I also want to talk about a guy called Davo, who you saw there on that film. Again, a guy with a big beard, and he's got a bit of a gruff manner, and he's got a bit of an inherent suspicion of people like myself from the middle classes. He thinks that people like me know nothing about life at all. So it took quite a long time before we became friends. But how it happened was I was given the job of going and picking up Davo and bringing him to David's Place meetings. So I used to go and pick him up from his housing commission place. And Davo is a poet. He writes the most beautiful.
Street.
He's a street poet, and he writes the most beautiful poetry. But he also has a great love of Bob Dylan, and I too have. Since I've been 15, I've loved Bob Dylan. So once we realised we both had this love. It became the basis of a very firm friendship. The thing about his love, it was amazing. He knows every song that Bob Dylan has ever written, and he knows every word of every song. It is truly incredible. And I said to him one day, "What's your favourite album, Davo?" And he said an album which I'd never even noticed much. I thought it was one of Bob Dylan's weaker albums. He said it's called "Shot of Love." He said, "Listen to it again." And I did. And I discovered it was the most beautiful album. And then I came back and said, "What you think?" I said, "It was great, Davo." And he said, "What's the best song?" And I said, "Every Grain of Sand" was my favourite. He says, "You're all right, mate." And I think that was when our friendship really began. And he could trust me that I knew a good song. So that was Davo. And the third person I want to talk about, who was also on that film, he was a bald man wearing glasses. He's a famous man in Sydney, a notorious man, I should say. He is a Nazi, and he used to terrorise people in Sydney, particularly when we walked on moratoriums against the Vietnam War. That's how Judy and I actually originally met. It was on marching on a moratorium, and his name, everyone called him the Skull, and he used to come and try to viciously beat up university students who were marching, and he was terrifying. He was, I don't exaggerate this, but I used to have dreams about Ross for many, many years. And then one day, about 10 years ago, I walked into David's place, and there he was, sitting in the prayer group. I nearly turned around, such was my fear of him. But there was no way I was going to be asked him to leave. So I sat down, and he was very quiet. And from that time on, he's become the most regular attendant of David's place. He's on his journey to being baptised as a Christian. And I've discovered he is a very lovely man. He was, at one stage, the National Art School were looking for the opportunity of getting students to paint and draw bad people, sort of, or notorious people. And I said to Ross, "Do you want to be part of that?" He said, "Yep, I'm in." And so I rang the National Art School, and they said, "Yeah, we'd love to have Skull. That'd be fantastic." He said, "The only thing, he's a dangerous man, and you must stay with him every minute of the day. Don't separate yourself from him." So I spent one day where I was literally with Ross every minute of the day, and we got to be fantastic friends. So I'll turn it up to Judy, and she can talk about retreats.
Well, all these people come on retreat with us, and every year we take groups on retreat, and I'm going to speak about 3 different retreats that we go on. They love to come to St Benedict's Monastery on the outskirts of Sydney, and the monks warmly welcome them to the guest house. They invite them to join the Liturgy of the Hours, and we share the occasional meal with the monks, and they are invited to share the beautiful grounds, which include a labyrinth and the herd of cows, which is quite a fascination for these people who are usually in the streets of Sydney. It works quite well because we have our oblate retreat the week before the David's Place retreat. So the oblates do all the cooking, we bring bed linen and make up the beds and toiletry bags and prepare the place very beautifully. And then some come along to help in whatever way is needed. But that the David's Place people love coming back and back to the monastery and being with the monks. Even some get up in the dark of the night to come to vigils, and even push their friends in their wheelchairs over gravel paths over to the monastery to share the first prayer of the day. So it's a great commitment, great interest, and it's mutual. The monks love the David's Place people coming there, the chaos that inevitably attends their visit, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But as well, each year we have a group to our home. We live on an island in the Hawkesbury River, just north of Sydney, and about 10 people come to our home. And we just do a rhythm of prayer, meditation. But what's really lovely is that all our friends on the island, none of whom would have any interest or connection with religion in any form, except perhaps the New Age, they love to be part of the David's Place visit, and they'll make a meal, come and be with us for the meal. They'll come and do an art lesson, painting stones or pieces of bark, or somebody invited us to their home for afternoon tea. They delighted in bringing out the best china, and we had a lovely afternoon tea with our little fingers out, and then we went and sat in their beautiful cave that overlooks the river and had this extraordinarily intimate conversation while it was pouring with rain outside. One of our friends did a crystal bowl sound healing with everybody lying on the floor and some not asleep. But it's really, we feel, a great blessing to have these people in our home and to be with our friends with them. They're great company. And I thought I'd just speak about some of the surprises that we've had. One time they were with us and the weekend paper was lying on the table, and we started looking at the quiz. There was a question about the Odyssey, and two of them, Don was one and Kevin, started saying, speaking about Odysseus and Penelope, and did they go there, and did that happen before this? And there was a very intelligent conversation that was completely left field for me and for us. And there's always a lot of surprises. It's very fresh and in the moment, and they're very easy company. In fact, I've been reflecting lately that occasionally I might find myself saying too much or trying to make a point or to be something, and I just see myself in a kind of mask. And they're very kind. There's never anything pointed, or they probably don't even realize that they've given me a lovely little gentle life lesson to just be myself. The final retreat that I'm going to speak about is last year. 12 of them flew to Alice Springs, to Campfire in the Heart, to the retreat centre that we've become involved with there. And it was a big undertaking, a lot of fundraising. Some people bought a ticket for one, and even one of the David's Place people, John O, who we saw in the film, he could afford to buy his own ticket. So he did, and he bought one for his friend. And there's this wonderful generosity. Whatever they've got, they hold in common. Well, arriving in Alice Springs, they were immediately in awe of this beautifully stark desert landscape and of all the Indigenous people in the streets. And just as we walked around, and they really tuned into the story of the settlers coming and taking land from these people who'd lived there for 40, 50, 60,000 years. Sometimes there were massacres, and the enormous dislocation is very evident everywhere today. So as we visited each place, we'd lean in and we'd say we'd stop for a prayer and a huddle cuddle, we called it, and we'd all put our arms around each other and heads in, and we'd just say some words about being in this place where so much has happened, where remembering our First Nations brothers, sisters and brothers who perhaps lived here, and we holding their suffering in our hearts and hoping for justice and for friendship. And it was a great connection between us all, that concern and being in those places of beauty and of suffering. So lots of aspects of that I could speak about, but I just thought a couple of snapshots of our David's Place people. Sean, he wasn't in the film, but Sean, who calls me Judy Garland, because he's a great fan of old movie stars, including Grace Kelly, and he loves the royal family as well. And recently he bought a songbook of the McCartney-Lennon music. So I don't think Paul's mentioned yet that Sue loves to take photos, nothing but photos. And so we were having our inevitable photo, and somebody started singing Let It Be, and we all started singing Let It Be, and we had the words, which was marvellous. And it was a very joyous, spontaneous moment. And the last one is quite a surprising moment where we had Cardinal Pell, who has been a very contentious figure in the Australian Church and a great friend to David's Place. He comes and sits on the milk crates with us all. He happened to be there on the same day as Miss Australia. So somebody cheekily, well, cheeky things happen all the time, suggested that they swap headgear, which they did. So we had the Cardinal in the Miss Australia tiara and Miss Australia in the Cardinal's zucchetto. I learned today it was called the Little Crimson Zucchetto. And we have a wonderful photo that really captures that moment of joy and laughter and fun and freedom, really, I think, and naturalness. So, yes, we are running out of time. Or might say a couple of moments about prayer.
Prayer is at the kind of heart of David's Place, and some of that is we meditate Christian meditation for 15 minutes. On retreats we meditate longer, but some of the people's attention is it's a struggle to do 15 minutes meditation, but we do that every time when we meet, and then we share the best moment in the day that's just passed. And then we do Lectio Divina on the passage of scripture from the day. And then we have intercessory prayer for people in events. And the David's Place people take this very seriously. They really love to pray for people around the world. Recently, when Father Lawrence was undergoing his treatment, they would pray for Father Lawrence every time, and they'd always ask me, how's Lawrence going? I had a patient at one stage who had leukemia, and I asked them to pray for her, and they did for years. Teenage girl. And then one day in the Herald, there was not a headline, but it was on the front page of the Herald. It said this girl had made this miraculous recovery from leukemia, and the David's Place, one of the people, Don, brought the paper in and said, "Look what we've done." Anyhow, I told the father of this girl, and I was treating her at the time, and I told the father that all these street people had prayed for Lucy all through her illness, and he said, "I want to come." So the father came along and sat, and I got to a stage I had to leave, and I said, "Do you want to lift home?" He said, No, I'm staying here. I love it here. And so that was a little bit about prayer. I just want to finish with a poem that Davo wrote. He's written 6 books of poetry since we've been involved with him, which we've helped him publish. But this was a poem which he calls A Blessing. And Davo says, "May you know by your heart what is real. May living waters cleanse your soul. By loving, may you understand and live what God has planned. Because of you, many others live." Because of you, may others live. Because of you, may others love. That you may find within your heart a paradise, a work of art. That's by David Marsh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. What can I say? I mean, what can I say? You're going to get lots of messages, I think, on the chat. I've taken some notes, and one of the things that you said at the beginning is a healthy society is where there is a community of the haves and have-nots. And that for 26 years, this community has grown and offered its love. And the invitation, come and be part of a friendship, is what I heard. And the images that you gave, the stories you offered are just divine, divinely given. And I think all of us now want to be there. Want to be part of it.
You're welcome.
And I just thank you for all of us listening to you both. You are incredibly precious members of our community, so thank you. Shall we just end with our closing prayer? May the divine assistance be always with us, and with our absent brothers and sisters and all those taking part in David's place. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Janet, and thank you, Paul and Judy, for that absolutely wonderful glimpse of David's place this morning. I could have just gone on listening to you, but I know time is running out. But absolutely wonderful and so inspiring. So, yes, if I could hop on a plane, I would. There you are. So it's time now for us to look forward to next week. And we have someone who, again, is very well known to you. It's Janet, who was our welcomer this morning. And Janet will be talking to us about me, myself, and I. But who am I? Does the ego demand an answer, or does God already know who I am? So something a bit different, and that'll be wonderful next week as well. And Janet has been a member of WCCM in the UK since 2000, but is grateful to be fully part of our wider international community, having led retreats in Spain, Denmark, Poland, and New Zealand. She says, wherever I am, it always feels like coming home. And I think that's the wonder of our meditation community, isn't it? So thank you. We look forward to hearing from you next week, Janet. So in the meantime, I wish you all a very, very good week, and we look forward to seeing you same time next week. God bless.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Mary, for sorting out the technical as well.
It was because we had to stop the screen share and restart it, and I didn't click on the audio.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bea. Thanks, Stu.
Thank you.
Mary. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Paul.
you, all of you.
Beautiful.
Bye.
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 Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paul
Lovely.
and Judy.
See all your faces like flowers looking at us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, Fred. Bye, Magda.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye, Janet. Bye, Julie. Bye, Paul and Judy.